Hello and welcome to the 44 Minutes of Heaven we call the D1Baseball podcast. I am, in fact, the pride of Newtown Edgemont Little League, Michael Patrick Rooney III. I am joined by my favorite New Englander, Aaron J. Fitt. Fitzy, how are you?
I am doing fantastic, Runes. How are you?
I'm good. Your trip to Macon, Georgia? That's Georgia, right?
It is, yeah. It was good.
Excellent. Awesome.
Good trip to Macon. Good trip. I had some decent barbecue there. I had a
Did see
couple
that.
of not particularly competitive baseball games. The second one, I should take that back. The second one, Mercer had a shot, but no, it was good. It was good. It was impressive to see Wofford kind of just do their thing there for a couple of days. They're a lot of fun.
And how's the beef jerky in Macon, the greater Macon area?
I did not get a good feel for that. I'll have to get back to you. My next trip to Macon, I'll be sure to check out the jerky outlets.
Thank you. Please do
Yeah.
that. We are also joined by the Commissioner of the Republic of East Texas, Kendall J. Rogers. Kendall, how are we?
I'm doing well. By the way, Aaron, are we going to call that brisket that was on your plate?
Ooh,
I feel like
You
Lincoln
know,
Riley's
it
brisket
sounds
was more
accusatory.
moist than that.
Anytime I tweet a picture of barbecue, I get all these barbecue know-it-alls being like, "Oh, that brisket doesn't have the right amount of this or that." But I will say that this brisket was probably fringy. I will grant you that
Okay.
the carrying tools for that particular meal were the pulled pork and the
Yeah,
mac
the
and
pulled
cheese
pork
was
looked good.
dynamite. Mac and cheese
Yes.
was
Yeah,
dynamite. That was really the
those two
standout.
things look really good, but I had to give you a hard time about the brisket. I mean, after all, I do live in Texas.
And I will grant you this: the Republic does make the best brisket. I mean, as far as
Yeah.
in my
You don't give
travels,
Carolina credit. You guys make the best pulled pork.
look at this. We've reached an accord here. We've reached understanding.
Friends, everybody's friends. Gentlemen, speaking of brisket, today's podcast is brought to us by our friends at S2 Cognition. See what I did there, Fitzy? That transition?
That
That
was
was
pretty
elite.
slick. That's pretty
That was
slick.
elite
I don't
because
know if that really goes together, but I like it.
Kendall had driven us out of the stadium with the brisket talk, and now I'm having to bring us back to S2 Cognition. But let me tell you this, they are the leading sports science cognitive tech platform. They give players visibility into how their brains are wired to make split-second decisions at game speed. S2 works with teams and coaches to administer the digital S2 eval. It measures a player's millisecond reactions, such as their ability to swing on time and make contact, their level of self-control to not chase pitches, also anticipation of pitch location, making sure they're swinging at the right spot, and more. The results are detailed in a personalized S2 score report, giving athletes and teams insight on how to practice more efficiently to get better,
Oh,
comma, faster.
almost.
Oh my gosh, we pulled up. Sniper. This report is also being used for drafting and recruitment purposes across the NCAA and MLB clubs. While right now S2 works exclusively with clubs and organizations, be on the lookout as this eval will be more broadly accessible to individual athletes over the next year. Oh my gosh, the word efficiently just took me down. Can I get a flag? Was that targeting?
I thought that was
That was pretty good.
otherwise it was a very strong read, but I got to dock you a full grade for
Oh,
that stumble.
yeah, seriously. I feel like one of those gymnasts. I've trained for 4 years only to just blow the word efficiently.
To be fair, it's a tough read. There's a lot going on with that read, but I'll tell you what, it's all worthwhile information. People out there need to check out S2 Cognition. They're doing some cool
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome,
Yeah.
and I like that they're forcing me to be better. It's kind of thematic that
Yeah.
their S2 is forcing me to bring my A game. So,
That's
um,
hey, you know what? The most impressive part of that is that you didn't run out of breath. You must be
I
in
al-
peak shape.
I almost did, but you're right, I
Okay.
didn't. But efficiently, man, I like that was a full face plant. That was like who was the Houston kid that hit the home run and then did a face plant on the Uzi?
Oh, it was Brandon Usi, yeah.
Yeah, he kind of like he pimped the home run and then coming around first, it just absolutely ate turf. That's a good look.
He's a good player, by the way.
Yes, he is. He's hit a bunch of home runs. Uh, oh, Brenton Dufresne coming at you already, Fitzy, in the chat. Come on, Fitzy. You
Wasting no
still don't
time.
know who the
Oh
AAC daddy
yeah.
is. Hashtag roll wave.
Well, I
Oh.
think this is actually, and I tip my cap to you, Brenton, because I think this is a callback to last week, or maybe in the Picks podcast when I
Oh
said
yeah.
I was picking East Carolina because somebody made the point in the chat the previous week, like, how could you pick against East Carolina? Like, you can't pick against Daddy. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. East Carolina has kind
Daddy.
of been the daddy of that conference, and so I picked them in New Orleans, and they let me down. Apparently we've got a new daddy.
Yeah. Hey, what do you guys think about? So the weekly picks are the best. The graphics that our friends at Helium produce are amazing. People love him. People love to beat us up about him. But our man Patrick Ebert, who is maybe the most loyal person I've ever met, he's one of the best people I've ever met. But he kind of sold us down the river on Twitter. I don't know if you guys saw that, but one of
I
the
didn't see
series,
that.
did you see that, Kendall? You know what I'm talking about?
No.
So Patrick Ebert, hashtag Peebert, he was the only one of the 9 of us to pick one of the series. And I'm pulling it up while I'm speaking. And he was, he pointed that out on Twitter. And at first I was thinking that is kind of foul play. The more I thought about it, I thought, actually, that's awesome. And I'm all in. I'm absolutely all in on it. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. Oh, yeah. Patrick was the one person who picked TCU.
Well, I'm all in on that. I mean, that's not selling down the river. You got to strut your stuff. Hashtag strut your stuff, like right. St. Peter's would do,
like the Peacocks would. Boys, so I got a couple updates for you, if you don't mind. Speaking of Patrick Ebert, now this is a real transition. So my whole Logan Sims saga, there actually is a person with a 2-syllable first name that begins with the letter L, last name Sims, who was a draft pick of the Atlanta Braves in this century. Mike Farron, of course, Coach Farron, and Patrick Ebert both gave me the answer over text. It was Lucas Sims. He's in the big leagues with the Reds. That's the guy. That's why I can't remember Landon
Farron
Sims'
must be
first
really
name.
bored.
Yeah, so there you go. So I wanted to point that out, that I wasn't totally making stuff up. You guys don't have to.
That's good.
That still doesn't explain the Logan, though.
Yeah, that's just that part's problem. The other thing I wanted to point out to you guys is I was a proud executive platinum on American Airlines, but because of the pandemic, haven't flown much the last 2 years. Boarded my plane to Boston last week, only to discover that I am now a gold level flyer.
Ooh.
That is 3 levels down from executive platinum. I was in group 4. I was kind of panicked. Does that mean that I can't even put my luggage on the plane? Like, what is this group 4 stuff? So that's me feeling sorry for myself. It's fine.
Are you okay?
No, not really. But I'm talking myself into that. Hey, this is going to build toughness. I'm getting back to like old school. Build this thing back up. But in more private moments, I'm just absolutely.
Did you tell TSA that you're ESPN's Tom Hart?
I should have done that. I should have just said anything. My name is Senator Kyle Peterson. My name is Tom Hart.
I'm still trying to get KP to challenge Ben Sassy there in the state of Nebraska.
Yeah, we
got primary.
Let's go.
KP.
Let's go. So that's it. I wanted to give you guys those 2 updates. I figured we could start. We all saw. Yeah, I'm here to share. I figured we could start because we all saw live baseball this weekend, which is kind of awesome. So Kendall, you saw A&M and Arkansas, and our good friend Tom Schofield, producer for ESPN, college baseball producer, the pride of Sussex County, New Jersey. He kind of came at me on text and said, okay, interesting. Oklahoma State loses their series, drops a bunch. Arkansas loses their series, drops minimally. And he also then said, hey, if you need help, I'll try to make myself available on Sunday nights. That was a pretty good dig. I appreciated the sarcasm in that. That's when we do
whatever,
the
Sco.
Exactly. But I did say that, Kendall, you were there, and you actually were impressed by Arkansas despite them losing the series. So tell us what you saw.
Yeah, so I'll say this. I think in the opener, Connor Nolan was really, really good. Obviously, Nathan Detmer was really good for him as well. But I think when you look at Arkansas, I think the end of that Sunday game was maybe potentially a turning point for the offense. Obviously, the first 2 games, the offense really didn't take care of business. Brady Slavens had a couple of home runs in the middle of the game. But other than that, until Sunday, until really the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th innings, their offense had been kind of stagnant. And I just thought during those 4 innings, they hit the ball hard. Robert Moore, whose batting average isn't great, he actually hit the ball really hard throughout the weekend. So I kind of came away from the weekend still thinking the same way I did about Arkansas as I did before. I don't think this is a team that I expect to continue to kind of waffle offensively down the stretch. I think eventually they're all going to get on the same page, but I'll have more on that tomorrow. But I talked to Dave Van Horn about it. He just kind of said, hey, listen, it just seems like one game, a couple of guys kind of get back on track, and then a couple of guys kind of fall off the wagon. And he goes, we just got to find a way to get everybody, kind of get everybody on the bus at once. And so, I just think when you look at Arkansas's depth, Brady Tigert, had a spin rate over 3,000 with his breaking ball, was up to 94, 95 with his fastball. They've obviously got the pieces in the bullpen. The pitching staff's in good shape. I think the offense is going to come through. So I'm still sold on the Hogs. I mean, maybe that's just false hope, but I did not come away from that series thinking, boy, Arkansas has a lot of question marks. I came away from that series thinking, man, I don't know how in the world that A&M is like this decent after the way they looked at the Frisco College Classic. Because remember, the Frisco College Classic, I mean, they went 1-2 and lost to Wazoo and Wichita State, and they didn't exactly look very good in those two games. And so that staff's done a really good job. I mean, if you look at A&M, Nathan Detmer threw well, moved Menifee threw really well to the bullpen. And then when you look at Jacob Polish, I mean, you're talking about a guy that the last 2 years, Runes, at Stanford had an ERA, I think, approaching 4. And if you look at what he's done for A&M, he came out of the bullpen on Friday. He came out of the bullpen on Sunday and threw 2 innings. Arkansas had the go-ahead run, fellas, on second base in the 9th inning or the 8th inning, and he got out of that jam with no outs. And so that just gives you an idea of how confident he is. The biggest thing for him, and he's been able to kind of spin a breaking ball. He didn't have that at Stanford. He was more primarily a fastball changeup guy. But, he has been the X factor for A&M right now with 46 strikeouts and just 6 walks. And so, I came away still feeling like I believe in Arkansas. Clearly, they have question marks offensively, but I think that unit will come together. But, guys, this is an A&M team now that is in the discussion for a host site. I mean, that is mind-blowing when you consider the injuries, the turnover, and things like that.
If I may jump in here, Runes.
Please.
A message for Mr. Sco. Maybe they don't teach mathematics in Essex County, but
Sussex, but yes.
Sussex,
Northwest New Jersey.
Who even cares? But
New Jersey.
Arkansas went 3-2 in the week, and Oklahoma State went 1-3 in the week.
Uh-huh.
Arkansas went on the road and lost 2 out of 3. Oklahoma State was at home and lost 2 out of 3. I mean, there's various reasons to make that kind of a move. So just in defense of the rankings, take that, Sco.
Yeah, I have to say, though, my favorite part of the whole transaction was Sco saying that he's going to try and make himself available on Sunday nights. That sarcastic.
Hashtag stay in your lane.
Well, I did, Kendall. You really helped me, though, because Sco went to Charlotte, and we get a lot on that thread. You get a lot of the hashtag Charlotte with 2 T's, and then your tweet today about Queen's University.
How about that? The biggest news of the day: Queen's University of Charlotte going to D1.
I was able to reply with that and say, Sco, I think you've got bigger things to be dealing with, like win back your city type of stuff. So that was really helpful.
Hey, by the way, speaking, since we have good segues here, we talk about Sco. Can we talk about Chris in Louisville and the fact that Georgia gave up 5 runs in 3 games against Alabama on the road this past weekend?
Yeah. Fitzy, would you care to our favorite caller, Chris from Louisville? Do you have anything you'd like to share?
I think Chris from Louisville is my favorite caller, actually.
Oh, there's no question.
I'll give him that.
Number 1 ranked. Speaking of rankings, number 1 ranked caller that we have.
He's a delight.
Chris from Louisville is also the only person I know that has his picture up in the Astros press box. He's a really famous D1Baseball reader.
Is that because of his call in to our? No, that's because of
probably so. Yeah, he did nothing significant at all for the Astros organization. So
Chris from Louisville has been giving us a hard time because, especially me, because I'm on record saying Georgia's going to Omaha this year, and I have not wavered from that, despite some bumps in the road. He's giving me a hard time because Georgia has had an 8+ ERA in SEC play heading into this weekend. And so I think it's important to point out that they, as Kendall just did, that they only allowed 5 runs in 3 games. They did get shut out on Sunday, but won the series on the road at Alabama, a good club. Cannon coming back clearly changes the dynamics for the Bulldogs. It just takes a lot of strain off of the whole pitching staff. And he went 5 hitless. I would say that is an encouraging return for Mr. Cannon. And how about Nolan Crisp out of nowhere? Taking the ball in the series opener, goes 5 2/3 shutout. They need stuff like that, though. They need to find some guys, right? Like, there's no question they needed answers on the mound. And so is the Crisp thing sustainable? I don't know, but let's see. But Cannon is definitely sustainable. That's one of the best pitchers in the country. And Liam
Yep.
Sullivan, I thought it was very encouraging. Pitched well on Sunday in defeat also. So I still think Georgia's pitching, it won't be as good as we thought it would be heading into the season because of the injuries, but I think it will still get on track as it is starting to do. And their offense is good because it's, an older group of guys we've talked about a lot with physicality and maturity.
Yeah, and Jonathan Cannon threw not only 5 good innings, Fit. I mean, he threw 5 perfect innings. He left
That's
the game.
perfect.
Yeah, 5 perfect innings in his first game back.
And I would put Georgia in that same category with Auburn. I still have Alabama in this group. A&M certainly deserves to be in this group, where I'm not like, infatuated with the roster. The roster is good. I wouldn't call it like blow me away, but man, I like the cut of their jib. I mean, they play hard every week. They find ways to win. They most often don't have self-inflicted defeats. I mean, you have to beat them. Georgia's won 4 of their 6 series in the SEC, and this is a year in the SEC where if you can just not step on yourself, you can win games. It's kind of fun. It's kind of cool. So hey, Fitzy, you wrote an awesome piece on Wofford. You went and saw that SoCon matchup. My 2 biggest takeaways. I would encourage everyone to read this piece. It was phenomenal. The way Wofford, who's not a destination program for recruits, where they have found niches to enable them to be successful in a very difficult baseball league, I would say. And they've chosen, the stolen base game, the running game, and they've got 3 low slot jokers. I mean, I love the creativity. It's so fun. Tell me your big takeaways from that series.
Yeah, I mean, I walked away just really impressed with Wofford. Clearly, they played 2 really good baseball games there, and their style of play is just fun. It's entertaining. It's like, as I think I wrote it, it kind of combines the daring do of Mike Gillespie's small ball style, and like kept expecting Wofford to attempt a double squeeze like Skip would do, with kind of that fast break, Matt Degg's pack mentality offense. They are aggressive. They're always pushing the action with that running game. But the funny thing about it is it's not like it's necessarily a bunch of burners. I mean, like I loved the moment where they had runners on the corners, and it's like your burly catcher and your burly first baseman are the runners, and they like execute this perfect, steal of home basically with like a delay steal off first when the throw comes. The times a break perfect. They're just so well coached. Everything about them is just the attention to detail is really impressive. And it's an old group. I think it's 8 upperclassmen in that lineup. It's a steady team that has some firepower, not a lot. Ryan Galaney is an intriguing kind of emerging talent, really physical third baseman, and that's surprisingly athletic too. He runs well for a bigger guy, and John Dempsey's hit some home runs. But I mean, mostly it's a bunch of guys that handle the bat and put it in play and spray it around and work counts to really grind you down. And they run, I mean, they pick their spots so well. They're just really intelligent. And so they're fun. I mean, they have the kind of pitching that's going to scare you with stuff. No. But Matthew Marshall was very good. I mean, it's like a 88 to 91 guy. Fastball plays above that because of, the downhill plane and whatever, the riding life and all that, with a good enough, secondary pitch. But I mean, like it's not like blow you away stuff, but you bring in those low slot jokers. I mean, and then you get some high slot jokers that they'll mix in too out of the bullpen. And it's just like a good combination of looks. And, I still think Mercer is a quality club. I didn't see their best. Obviously they did come back and win the series on Sunday after I left. But neither of these teams has pitching that's going to scare you. But I think Wofford has enough variety there to really be dangerous.
God, yeah, so good, man. It's such a. I'm sure it's this way every year, but I'm really focused on it this year. Man, we've got some interesting mid majors this year. It's just a really fascinating year for mid majors across the country. I will do my weekend. I went to Boston. Complete honor. So fortunate. I got to do the ALS awareness game. Boston College hosted Virginia Tech at Fenway Park. Being at Fenway was amazing. I'll credit ESPN, my employer. It's awesome that they put this game on the airwaves. The Red Sox to host it at Fenway. And, I really didn't know that much about ALS other than it's kind of a baseball-centric disease because of Lou Gehrig Keith LeClaire, obviously very well aware of, but the way Mike Gambino, the Boston College coach, described it, it's like, Pete Frates gets the diagnosis, and the way the reason it was counterintuitive to me, like, I don't understand awareness for ALS, and what I learned is that this disease is so horrible and it's so fast that people, like, the morbidity rate is it's super quick, and so by the time people realize what's going on, the person has passed. And so anyway, Pete Frates, gets a diagnosis. He was a captain at Boston College, and it's basically like, okay, man, you got 1,000 days to live. What are you going to do? And where everyone else was, trying to console Pete Frates, he was like, no, we're getting to work. And, the ice bucket challenge, if you go on I would encourage anyone, go to Pete Frates' website. It blows you away. So anyway, Danny Wexelman was our sideline reporter. She spent an entire half inning with Mike Gambino. He was incredible. The other thing that I wanted to point out is John West, who's a relief pitcher for Boston College, really big kid. He's like 6'8", was the Massachusetts High School Basketball Player of the Year. His dad passed away from ALS. And he just talked about how the Frates families were heroes for us because they validated us, like they were our voice in this whole thing. I mean, I'm telling you, that video is on Danny Wexelman's Twitter feed. It was just blow you away. So the whole experience was incredible. Baseball wise, Virginia Tech is awesome. They kind of remind you of that team. Like, they don't have a ton of pitching, but they've got enough. Drew Hackenberg was really good. The only thing I don't like about Virginia Tech, you guys, they just don't have a player on that roster that's been in a regional. Like, that's the only nitpick. I love their defense. I love the diversity of their offense. I love, they've got star power, Gavin Cross. I mean, the Tanner Schobel's legit. So anyway, Virginia Tech was really fun to see in person, and they've now won, I think, 5 or 6 straight ACC series.
Yeah.
And so I say all that, this is the serious part of the podcast. I just wanted to, for us to just take a moment and acknowledge Danny Evans. Like, obviously we all, tweeted about that over the weekend. Danny passed on Saturday, 41 years old. Just heartbreaking. He was one of the brightest assistant coaches we had in college baseball. For sure was going to be a head coach. I've shared with you guys, we got to recruit him at Arizona State. We were really more recruiting him for the person he was than the player. He was a good player in the state of Arizona, but he wasn't like the slam dunk kid that you would recruit to Arizona State, except for, like, you met him and you're like, okay, I want 50 of him in my program. And so he picked Gonzaga, which was absolutely the right choice. And I don't know, like, I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on this, but Gonzaga has this amazing mid-major program. And I feel like, Mark Maktoff is one of the architects, Steve Hertz before him, but Danny's fingerprints are all over that to me.
He's been along, for a while there, since he was a very young coach. And it clearly just was a really good talent evaluator. I remember, I'd call him when I was doing recruiting stuff and just kind of pick his brain about recruiting classes and, players that he would run across. And he was one of those guys that, he had that, he had that knack for it. Just, he could tell you guys that he saw once, 4 years ago, and when they were like 13 years old, and he could, and he remembered, and like, he just had that it factor that you look for with a recruiter. And that's not the easiest place to recruit players, to go play. I mean, Spokane, Washington, it's baseball, I mean, it's like, it's an outdoor sport. We start our season in February.
Crazy. Yeah.
And they were able to do it. And it was just really, I'm with you, Runes. I mean, it's a great man. I hate it. It's terrible news, and just heart goes out to him.
Yeah. Kendall, here's what's interesting as we kind of turn to the baseball part. Like, Gonzaga, I don't want to get ahead of myself, and, like, I get, okay, Robert Redford, the natural, but, like, Gonzaga just lost a great coach, but they have a team that could do some serious stuff in the postseason. Those kids were in a regional last year. They won the first game. If I remember correctly, Alec Jacob beat LSU in the first game, and they're playing Oregon in the 1-0 game. And so the Gonzaga at Kempner, it sounds like, is going to come back. Either already has or is coming back. So I don't know. Am I crazy, Kendall, or Gonzaga could do some damage?
They definitely could. I mean, if you look at that rotation, with Tristan, and you look at, Will Kempner coming back, and obviously Gabe Hughes at the front end. I mean, you could argue that weekend rotation is as good as anybody's in the country. And so, when you have a rotation like that, you got a chance to win every game in a regional. And guess what? They set up better for a super than they do a regional.
Very
And
fair.
so I think if they can find their way through a regional, they get the kind of the right setup. Especially if they host, they could easily be in a super and not only get to Omaha, but they can make some noise. Here's the interesting stat about Gonzaga, though. Gonzaga has 18 wins on the road this year. The closest team to them has 14. 18 wins on the road this year. That's pretty incredible. And I want to give a shout out to Coach Mactoff because when you have a situation like Danny, to where he was down here in Houston, MD Anderson. This was a couple of months ago. I was talking to Brandon Harmon, their assistant, and Danny was actually down here doing some experimental stuff, kind of basically like a, hey, this is 100% experimental. We'll just try it and see if it'll work. Obviously, it didn't work, but I mean, they had their top assistant not only dealing with cancer, but obviously away from the program. And so, I mean, I have a ton of respect for the job that staff has done. I have a ton of respect for the job those players have done this year. That's not easy to handle, and then go out there every day and play baseball. But this is a team that down the stretch, having to go through this, they're going to play with a lot of emotion, and they're going to play their what off. So they're a dangerous club.
Yep, no question about it. No question. So sad day for college baseball.
Yeah.
But obviously it's Gonzaga is a compelling story in a lot of ways. Hey, let's transition to some interesting player topic. So here's the question I want to ask you guys. I did not prep you, so this is going to be sorry, not sorry. This will be we'll miss a player or two, but that's okay. So this is late in the season, boys. We got 4 weeks left of the regular season. And I feel like the finalists for the Golden Spikes Award is still a little blurry. So when I say finalists, I'm saying the final four. So maybe we can just go around the horn. We could do it however we want. But who are some obvious names to you guys of some people that would be considered Golden Spikes finalists right now?
I've got a couple names right off the top of my head. From position player standpoint, I think Ivan Melendez from Texas,
Yes.
what he's done. I mean, I think he's third in the country in OPS with 21 homers. I think
first
he
in
leads
slugging, right?
21 homers, 61 RBIs, 36 walks, 33 strikeouts, and a 526 OBP.
It's and that's not a hitter's park.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like I know it's not as much of a graveyard as it used to be, but it's still not a hitter's park. And to put up those numbers is bonkers for a really good team. Him and Sonny DeShara, who leads the country in OPS, it still boggles my mind. That he left the SoCon for the SEC and got better, like way better. And he hit 20 home runs last year, or whatever, 21. But like he's such a more complete hitter. He's hitting 447 for Pete's sake, and the SEC.
He almost has a 600 OBP.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Twice as many walks and strikeouts for a power hitter. It's nuts. I mean, that's those are the first two names that jump out to me.
How about you, KR? Who are some other names?
I mean, from a position standpoint, I mean, that's by far the two guys. I mean, I don't think there's anybody close.
I mean, Kevin Parada still feels like he's in striking distance to me. Just because he's playing in that offense, but like he's not in the top 10 in the country in OPS right now. It's more, and I feel like OPS is probably not like a big stat, but Parada's within strike. Like Parada could win the home runs and the RBI title. I think Parada's got the most RBIs in the country right now with 66.
Yeah, that's true.
So Carlos Contreras from Sam Houston is ahead of him. He's got 71.
By the way, he's like the whack hitter of the week every week, Carlos Contreras.
He's really good. If you remember back the Nebraska series, this is kind of when everybody didn't know about him, but I wrote about him, and like it just seemed like he found a hole every single time he went to the plate. He's a really talented hitter.
Yep. No, for sure.
Runes, I've got another one. I mean, on the pitcher side. Should we go to pitchers, or is there another hitter?
Please, go for it.
Cooper Jerpy is the guy for me right now. Oregon State. I mean, he's 8-0. 2.08 ERA, and look at that strikeout walk. Would you ever have guessed that he would have 100 strikeouts against just 13 walks, Runes, in 60 innings? I mean,
not in a million
years. The control was not there nearly to that degree in the past. Like he still was effective, but he walked guys, and now he's just like a machine.
Yeah. I'm gonna trump not trump, but I'm gonna add another West Coast pitcher, Drew Thorpe, guys. There are two pitchers to my knowledge that are averaging 7 innings per start. One is Jason Savacool at Maryland, and the other is Drew Thorpe. And Drew Thorpe is right there, 10 starts, 2.41 ERA, 99 punch outs, 14 walks. but I don't know, like Savacool and Thorpe averaging 7 innings per start, like that is so not in vogue in 2022, and I kind of hate that. So yeah, I love that.
We had a couple of comments here in the chat. Geloff says Joe Lacates. Certainly he was the midseason choice, right? He's
Just cooled off.
He's
Yeah.
cooled off some. I mean, he's almost 200 points behind Sonny in OPS, but he's still having a great year. He's still very much in that conversation. And heck, so is Jack Hurley, Virginia Tech at this point. I mean, like his numbers are great, So Max Wagner caught fire this week. He was ACC Player of the Week for Clemson. All of a sudden, that guy's numbers are crazy. I mean, he's had a good year all along, but like you look up and it's like, whoa, he's top 5 in OPS. He's got 17 homers and 47 ribbies. So I mean, he's not going to win the Golden Spikes for a team that's 6-11 in the ACC, but there's a lot of guys putting up offensive numbers. I guess that's the point. So I'm looking for guys that are doing it on the mound. Some Mark Owenby in the chat says, "How about Drew Beam?" He's certainly had a great year. I have a hard time believing that the guy who's a Sunday starter. Without a lot of strikeouts either. That's the other thing about Drew Beam. I mean, he's 8-0 with a 1.86 ERA, but less than a strikeout per inning. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to see a
what?
Oh, go ahead, Kendall. You go.
Well, I was going to say, like, if he stays healthy and finishes the season strong, I mean, Jonathan Cannon could be in that discussion. I mean, you're talking about a guy with missed 2 starts and he still has 52 strikeouts and 3 walks.
But he's going to need Messick and Thorpe to miss starts or Jerpy to miss starts because they're counting.
Yeah, I mean, Jerpy 100 strikeouts and 13 walks is just insane.
Yeah. Hey, the Tennessee kids, it's almost like they're a victim of their own success. Like it's hard. I think to be the Golden Spikes winner, you have to like kind of separate yourself, and that team is really hard to separate yourself from. So it's interesting. How about Kendall? I don't know if you saw this. Tommy White now up to 18 bombs.
What does he need to get to?
25 to tie Torkelson, 26 to tie Todd Green, 27. He needs 9 to set the record. He's got 6 weekends basically to do that.
Yeah.
And our bet early in the season was would he match Torque? And I said yes. I don't remember what you guys said, but no, I said yes.
Yeah, Kendall was pro Torque.
That was just the regular season, right?
No, that's the full season. Get out of here, Kendall.
Although technically, Torque did not have the luxury of a postseason that year. They did not make the tournament, but or a postseason tournament. So, boys, here's another question I had for you. So, I again encourage everyone. The Nerdcast is incredible. The Nerd Master General Mark Etheridge leading the charge. Here's a question. I think our committee this year is going to have this challenge. The challenge is going to be you're going to have like some 13-win SEC teams that are of interest compared to and when I say 13-win SEC team, I mean like 13-17 in the regular season versus a 14-win ACC team that, and I mean 14-16 in the regular season versus like a mid-major. I'm just going to pick UNLV because they're top of mind for me. It's probably a bad example because their RPI is probably a huge problem. But let's say UNLV wins the Mountain West by like 5 or 6 games, which I think is kind of trending that way, but they get clipped in the tournament. If you guys, like when you guys are on the Nerdcast or even if you're on the committee, how in the heck do you compare those 3 groups of people? It feels impossible to me.
Yeah, and in UNLV's case, I mean, it's a team that feels like they should be in a regional based on the season that they've had and where they are in the standings, but ultimately, I mean, a 98 RPI is where they are, and it's just a non-starter.
Yep.
And so, I mean, if you started from scratch and blew up the whole system and threw out RPI, came up with some new metric, or weighed things differently, then maybe that wouldn't be the case. But I mean, we just have to operate within the framework that we have, and that is, if you're outside the top 60 in the RPI, you're done.
You're in trouble.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the real interesting thing to me when you look at the the potential field this year is trying to differentiate the bottom of the the ACC and conferences like that versus the Sun Belt. With right now you got Georgia Southern, you've got Texas State, Louisiana's coming on hot, and you've got these other conferences where there's more teams than usual kind of getting hot and getting in the mix for these postseason spots. I'm of the idea that instead of having, let's say, 2 or 3 extra ACC or SEC teams that are pretty much the same teams, I'd rather try my hand at some of these mid majors that have had really good years and
Yeah.
have a little bit better RPIs than they usually have that time of year.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to like Florida from a couple years ago. I think it was 2019 was the great example. So Florida was 13-17 in the SEC, but they were 5-1 against Miami and Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, I added those in there. So now what you got? You've got 18-18 in a weird, mythically created power league. Like, yeah, you're in all day long. So to me, what I don't like is, you guys have heard me use the Clemson example. I'm okay with 13-17. I'm okay with 14-16. But what's the other piece of evidence? And the thing I don't like is they just kind of limped over that threshold, and then okay, they're in. And I'm not saying the committee does that, but that's kind of where I come down. And especially their last 20 games. Like, if their last 20 games are uninspiring and they're under 500 in their league, to me, that's kind of a non-starter.
I agree with you on that, but the other thing to consider is that people have made this point to me before, because we know the committee does look at that. Was it the last 15 games is one of their metrics or something like that?
Yeah.
And I look at that too, but some schedules are just backloaded. I mean, and that's another factor to consider. I mean, some teams happen to have a really easy finishing stretch, and so they gain momentum and it makes their resume look better, but that's not really anyone's fault. It's just how it falls. And so I still, nonetheless, I think momentum should be considered, but I think you also have to consider the caliber of competition during that closing stretch.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's tricky. You go round and round those things. But again, that is the essence of why this committee's job is so hard. Is like, how do you compare these mid majors to, hey, like I'll throw this out there for Grand Canyon. What if Grand Canyon wins the WAC by a wide margin, and they win the WAC tournament, and they've got 4 wins over the likes of Texas Tech and Stanford and Oregon State? Can they be a host? I don't know. I don't know that their RPI is in there, but like, they're checking a lot of boxes, and all of Grand Canyon's blemishes, like, for instance, I'm giving A&M an excuse for their blemishes, right? Like, well, Penn and Frisco were. So doesn't Grand Canyon get the same luxury that, hey, all of their blemishes were early? I don't know. We could go round and round.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a mid major, you probably have just less room for that.
Yeah,
I mean,
no doubt.
Like if you're A&M, you can go out and win a series against Arkansas, and all the early season stuff's forgotten. But if you're Grand Canyon and you're in the WAC and you're the only regional team in your league, you got to make hay in those non-conference. It's just
I mean, if you compare like A&M and Grand Canyon right now, one team has road series wins over LSU and Georgia and a home series win over Arkansas. The other, their highlight is 2 kind of off schedule wins against Stanford, or one off schedule win against Stanford.
Yeah, Stanford, Oregon State, a midweek win at Oregon State, but they lost to Stanford and lost to Oregon State, so it's 1-1. And then those 2 midweek wins against Texas Tech, which were at home. So again, like, to your point, you're comparing midweeks versus weekends, and that that gets tricky. But
I mean, and ultimately, if their RPI was in the top 16, it'd be a different conversation. But right now they're 31, which is, granted, things are still fluid, but it's down 14 spots from just last week.
Yeah, and it's going to continue to sink. Like, there's not an opportunity. They could go undefeated from here and still problematic.
Boys, the last 2 weekends they play or their last 3 series they play teams with RPIs well into 200s.
And if I may, Runes, before you transition, I don't even know where you're going next, because we don't have an outline. We just in Runes we trust.
Yeah, that's right.
But to wrap up this conversation about kind of like those interesting mid-major regional teams, we have a question in the chat here from Me Jones, which is definitely his real name. I'm positive about that. Me Jones wants to know. Well, he doesn't actually have a question, but he says, if you haven't given any love to the Cajuns, can we get some love? And I think this is a good opportunity for us to talk about another a team that is on the rise, that has now put itself in this conversation now as an at-large team. Louisiana is up to 44 in the RPI. They are 12-6 in the Sun Belt. I think they've won, 5 or 6
5 straight? Yeah, I think
5 straight series. But that includes South Alabama, 2 out of 3, Georgia Southern, 2 out of 3, who's a top 5 RPI team at the moment. And Georgia State a sweep on the road this past weekend. So 3 real quality series wins. It's a team that's got a lot of momentum. And Kendall, you've seen the Cajuns, right? I mean, you like this team.
Yeah, I liked them a lot during fall ball. I mean, I saw them against LSU, and some of the guys that I wrote up during fall ball are having really good years. I mean, you look at Carson Roccaforte's having a nice year. Connor Kemple, hitting over 300 with 8 bombs. Tyler Robertson, a guy that I've always really liked his tool set. He's having a really nice year offensively. So a lot of these guys, other than really Kyle DeBarge, all these guys that we expected to have good years are having good years, and so. They're having a productive season, but they're on a nice run. They're 5 straight series wins, and Matt has them playing really well. So I mean, right now, we'll see what the nerd Master General says tomorrow night. But I mean, right now, I'd have Louisiana in.
Me too.
Boy, the Sun Belt having they're the Conference USA of 2022 right there.
You're right.
So
it's a good call.
Yeah, and I don't think Georgia State's out, but I mean, Georgia State's totally out of it, but they're certainly trending the wrong direction.
Boy, now that's going to be a fun conference tournament. Like that is a conference tournament that would be super. And it's who's hosting it? Do we? No, they don't have a host. They just they play somewhere, right?
That could be one of those tournaments, guys, that one of those 3 teams doesn't win it, and then they get a 4th bid and knock somebody else out from another tournament. I don't think it's gonna be one of those tournaments where if some off team wins, that one of those 3 teams isn't getting in.
Yep.
I agree.
Gotta love it. Boys, here's what I thought we could finish with.
Okay.
So the kind of the hidden ingredient in the tournament is the Regional Advisory Committee. And I feel like we probably don't talk about it enough because it's so mysterious. But the regional advisory committees they've taken the country and they've split it into 5 regions, if you will. And it's a way for because you can imagine like the committee, it just becomes a math conversation after a while. And the regional advisory committees, it's 1 coach per conference for the 31 conferences with an automatic bid. They split them into 5 parts of the country. And these coaches' job is to take the teams and the leagues in those regions and rank the teams according to the eyeball test. Like they're basically saying to the West region coaches, okay, forget what league everybody's in, forget their wins and losses and RPI, forget metrics. Tell us who are the best teams. You're a coach, you've seen them, you've heard about them. Tell us who the best teams are. Forget the math. And it's really kind of a genius idea. Now, here's the problem, right? There's a lot of the human element, right? It's like coaches and this coach likes this person, doesn't like that person, blah, blah, blah. I saw this team play on their best weekend. I didn't see this team play. But, baseball is a small fraternity and it's something, right? Like it's another data point. It's another variable to help the committee. We've already got enough math. I think many would argue it's too data driven. So what I wanted to do, boys, is I'm going to kind of go through the leagues that are in those regions, because I think what region you're in matters. Like, for instance, in a typical year, if you're a league that's in the region that the Southeastern Conference is in, that's probably becomes a crowded ranking, right? Because we know that the top of that ranking is going to be. So again, I'm going to read you guys the regions. By the way, anybody could look this up. Just Google NCAA Baseball Championships Manual. NCAA Baseball Championship Manual, and you'll find it. The coaches, the leagues are online. So, boys, I'm going to read you the leagues that are in the 5 regions, and I just want any type of reaction you got. Like, hey, that's good for that league. That's bad for that league. That's good for this team, bad for this team. I'm just looking for gut flinches here. Okay. The first region is called the East region. Here are the leagues that are represented there. America East, Metro Atlantic, Colonial, ACC, Patriot, Northeast, Ivy, A10. So when I see A10, I think about Davidson. So the East is America East, Metro Atlantic, Colonial, ACC, Patriot, Northeast, Ivy League, Atlantic 10. By the way, before you guys answer, does Davidson have an RPI that's even at largeable, or is it in the triple digits?
I think it's like in the 80s or 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
90 right now.
Yeah.
Nah, that's a bummer. They got a great team.
They do have a great team. I just wrote about them last week. Had a great conversation with Rucker Taylor. Their exciting young head coach. He's really an up and comer. He's really sharp guy. Like them a lot. I mean, and I think their team sounds intriguing. I hopefully get a chance to see them this year, because it seems like they got firepower. They got enough pitching. I mean, they can give you a lot of headaches if they can win that conference tournament and get into a regional.
Their catcher, Michael Carrico. I actually I texted Coach Taylor just to make sure I wasn't saying it Carico, or I was all over the place, but it's Carrico. Left-handed hitter. He was hurt a lot as a freshman, has already broken the school record for hit by pitch. He's in the top 5 in the country in OPS.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I think he's second.
Yeah, right behind Sonny D, or behind
Yeah,
Yvonne.
behind Sonny,
big
ahead of
Yvonne.
Ivan.
Yeah, there you go. So give me your guys' first flinches on that East region.
It seems so. So what are you looking for exactly? I mean,
So I'll give you an example of what I'm looking for. Like when I hear of that region, it feels like that's not good for Davidson because Davidson's RPI is a problem. So maybe they can make up for that by having the regional advisory committee push them up the rankings. The ACC looming there with 11-ish regional caliber teams, that feels like it hurts. So I guess here would be a question, like, where could you see Davidson take the 11 ACC teams that are tournament-ish? Where could you see coaches putting Davidson in that mix? 6, 8, 10? It's interesting, right?
yeah,
Yeah, 12.
I don't know. It's a great question. It's a really fascinating question. You're right. I mean, because you look at Davidson data point wise, they've got 0 games against top 50, and so. I mean, they put up, the thing is, they put up gaudy stats. Again, pitching and defense is a lot better than it was last year. It's a huge area of emphasis for them. Certainly their offensive numbers are great, but it's like you have to look at the caliber of competition, and they've got 23 games against teams outside the top 200. And so that's why it's just hard. It's just hard, I don't know. So I don't know where they belong. I mean, I'd like to see them, play a 3-game series against, North Carolina or somebody so that you have a better feel for it. But right now, I don't know.
Yeah, it feels like that's good for the ACC. That's what it feels like.
Am I the only one who just feels like they don't listen to the advisory committee at all?
Well, I feel like they
'cause if you
listen
look
to
at
them when they use the advisory
When they
committee
need a
when they
fig
need
leaf.
to. Yeah, and they need
I mean, but like what was it last year? Alabama, they said that they ranked well in the regional advisory committee. But I mean, for the most part, they just go straight off RPI. But you're right. The 1 or 2 instances they will use the committee as a crutch.
Yeah. By the way, go ahead, Fitzy.
And I have mixed feelings about the regional advisory committees and how useful they are. And even as someone who, I mean, I think it's the eyeball test is great when you're heading into the season and you're trying to predict what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still useful when you're 3 weeks into the season and you're trying to predict what's going to happen over the rest of the season. And it's like, you can't base it all on the first 3 weeks. Like, if Virginia goes out and beats the crap out of Siena, like that doesn't make them the best team in the country. You still have to use the eyeball test because you're projecting. But at the end of the season, you have a whole season's worth of data. Like I kind of think you should just use the data. I mean, that's kind of where I come down on that.
Yeah. I'm on both fronts. Like I like the, like, I think I like the idea of both. Like the data is helpful, but the data can get skewed. Although I think the committee's done a good job kind of accounting for the skewed data. They tend to give allowances on the West Coast. And the regional advisory committee you could see where it can get problematic, for sure. But
It can. I've heard of like 3 or 4 instances in the last decade where like a team was rated really low because there was a rival coach who was on the regional advisory committee. Like it happens.
Or at least there's sour grapes allegations.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that's the thing. Like we never get to see the regional advisory committee rankings, and that would be interesting. I don't know if that would be a net positive, but
there's no way they would ever show us that.
No, I don't think so either. And if they did, no coach would ever get on that committee. That would be.
It should be like college football where they show when the coaches vote or whatever, they show what the coach's ballot looks like.
Yeah. Gosh, it'd be interesting. By the way, Tanichi, I see you in there, and that is incredible. Basically, the gist of his thread is that Mississippi State has won 6 straight series against Ole Miss. The one thing that complicates that whole thing for me is that they play 4 times a year, so you can kind of pick and choose. But they're 18-4 in those 22 games. And the thing is, like, there's some good Ole Miss teams in there too. Like, that's an Ole Miss that includes 2018 Ole Miss, who was a top 8 national seed. That includes 2 super regional teams. I mean, when I think of that streak, I just think of Jake Mangum just was not going to lose to Ole Miss. Like he was not. Yeah. And it's like that continues.
I mean, it just reminds me of like the Michael Roth era Gamecocks owning Clemson. Mm-hmm. It's like they had that crazy stretch. Like certain groups of players are just, they have that it factor, and the Mangums and the Tanner Allens of the world had it, just like the Roths and the Matt Prices of the world had it.
Yeah, and how about Ole Miss, by the way, guys? I was kind of putting together my Ole Miss prediction for the rest of the year for the chat today. I mean, I could see them finishing 11-19 in that league. I mean, that is a legitimate scenario at this point.
It's gotten ugly, and I'm just shocked by it. Like, of all the things that have happened in this season, I think Ole Miss being where they are right now, 6-12. I think that might be the one thing that surprises me more than anything else.
Yeah, 12-18. I honestly it was kind of giving them a series that I didn't feel like they were going to win, and that was getting them to 12-18.
Yeah,
so
Ole Miss. That's a good topic. Like surprises. Okay, Ole Miss. I'm floored by. Long Beach State. I'm completely floored by. They've really fallen apart. Florida. I didn't see that. I really liked Florida.
I don't like the state of that program right now. And obviously,
Florida,
I think Florida. And obviously, Sully's an incredible coach. But like, you had the team last year that I felt like, even though they hosted, like they just played lifeless in the regional, like they didn't care at all. And then this year, I get it, they've got some young guys, but they also have some older guys in some key spots, and they just haven't been very good. They don't look like they're tough. They don't look like they're hard nosed. I'm not a fan of just the state of that clubhouse right now, and that's 2 years straight that they've had that issue. So that is becoming a cultural problem for that program, not just we have one bad batch for 1 year. This is a ongoing cultural issue with that program right now.
Yeah, the one thing I would throw in there, Kendall, is that like there's certain parts of your team that if they are super flawed, that can just totally implode your season. And like I think about Texas in 2019, where they just completely were decimated at catcher, and like that just wrecks everything. Like your pitchers feel like they're not getting strikes, and they had a young pitching staff. And it feels like Florida's bullpen it was good early and then just has been a problem. And I just feel like when your bullpen is a challenge, your team is kind of waiting around for bad things to happen, as opposed to just like going and, attacking things. So that is.
And I'll push back just a little bit, because I don't, I see what you're saying, Kendall, but I mean, like, baseball's hard. Like, I don't know if is it culture, or is it their clubhouse? Is it they don't care, or is it just that like they're getting beaten by older teams? Like, they're young in a lot of spots, and it's I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer.
I just don't sense like watching them. I don't see a sense of urgency, and I feel like you can kind of see that when you're watching teams.
But it does feel also like I've always felt like Florida is one of those programs that is run like almost like a pro team, where it's just they're very you've got guys who worked in pro ball on the staff, and they just are very like clinical and business-like. They've got these polished Florida kids who've been playing baseball 365 days a year their whole lives. They're just really skilled. They've never necessarily played with like an abundance of passion or fire, like even when they won it all, they had a great team, but it's not like the most, like a bunch of goofballs with antics and crap. It's just like they just kind of go about their business-like is how I would always have described their program. And so I don't, I think it's easy to look at that and say, oh, they don't care, or it's just a different mentality. I mean, I don't know.
They said they had foundational players too at those times.
Yes.
Like Brady Singer. Like, it blew me away. Brady Singer had to pitch in the bullpen his freshman year. Like, that would not be the case.
And what was team. Brady? Look at those teams that were so good. Brady Singer, Alex Faedo, bar fight meter off the charts, right?
Oh yeah.
Like
Mikey Rivera, Dalton
what Florida
Guthrie.
guys right now have, like, would you have on the bar fight meter?
I mean, I thought Colby Halter was supposed to be that guy, and he seems fine, but not in those guys' class for sure.
Yeah, they need to say it, they need an ass kicker on that team. They need somebody that's gonna whip them into shape a little bit, and it just doesn't look like they have it. Maybe somebody will emerge the final few weeks of the season. We've seen it before, guys. We've seen it before.
I think Wyatt Langford's an ass kicker. I'd take Wyatt Langford on my bar fight team. He's a big, strong
Would you?
man.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, he's been a breakout candidate. So, yeah, very interesting. So let's table the rest of the regional advisory committees. Anybody can look that up. It's really fascinating. But I think you guys made a good point. Like, hey, is it used? Is it not used? I don't know. Fitzy, I think you made a great point. Like, it seems like it's used when convenient. It's kind of like a fire extinguisher. It's
exactly.
like, yeah.
I liked where you're going with that. Is a neat idea, Runes, but I think that one fell flat. I think it's not a good that podcast topic. It's just like, I mean,
I'm more interested in it than you guys are. Yeah,
it's so mysterious.
I have two things for you real quick.
Yes,
number two, the other surprise for me, like I think we all thought Southern Miss would be good, but for Southern Miss to be number 4 in the country right now, and for their pitching to be that dominant, That has been a little surprising to me to be number 4 in the country. So that's a surprise. And I think the other thing for me, by the way, I wanted to give these two guys a shout out. But Shamar Page at Grambling State, Jake Noviello at Fairfield, both had 7-inning perfect games over the weekend. So congrats to those two guys.
Yeah, how about if you run into those guys in a regional, by the way? You know, they win their conference tournament, sneak in there, and you got to that's the 1 versus 4 game. So I had an argument with Coach Farron today. He's not in favor of 68 teams. I'm gonna win. I'm gonna get. Now he did make a good point. Like if we go to 68, it's probably just Power 5 teams that get extra bids. I don't know. It feels like 4 more chances for the committee to make a good decision. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, there's 300 teams. It feels like 64 it's hard to make. And if you look at the numbers of NCAA tournament field relative to the size of the sport compared to other sports, isn't baseball the smallest? Isn't it the smallest of the Division I sports? I don't know. I've seen the data on this though in the past. It's been a while. I see the argument for expansion, and I'm listening. I'm listening.
Yeah, it'd be cool Thursday night, the night before the tournament starts. Those playing games, I think that'd be kind of cool. But we shall see. Obviously, there's not a lot of change happening. What else, boys? That exhausts my agenda. Anything else that you would like to cover before we adjourn? Kendall, Waves, 10U Waves update. Did we win last weekend?
We did. Yeah, we did. So we're back on track a little bit. We lost to the worst team in the league a couple weeks ago, but we got back on track. Got the big shutout over the weekend.
You were upset about that loss to we beat the Panthers this weekend.
It was the Panthers. Yeah. Did you come up with a better name, by the way? That was your homework.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the Spring Klein ... Still working on it. The Houston Hammer.
It's taking you like a full week. It's very complex.
Yeah, I can't. You cannot rush a good nickname. It cannot be forced. It's got to come naturally.
You know what I want your homework to be this week? To have a little bit more faith in your alma mater. Because you picked against them again, and they swept Wake Forest and scored 46. What was it? How many? It wasn't 46. It was 33 runs in 3 games. Texas who scored 46 runs in 3 games.
I'm going to be the one holding a press conference this Thursday night for the preview picks because I talked a lot of smack as the first place person, and I am no longer in first place. So 5-5.
I went 9-1, and Nolan McLean. I'm on you because I almost went 10-0 if it wasn't for you.
Oh wow, that's a
direct
shot.
This coming from the guy who called out Bob Moore last week.
Well, I mean, Nolan McLean didn't leave us holding the bag with the Players Society.
That's well said. That is a good point. Poor Nolan McLean. He gives up that 7th run and then punches out to end the game. Oh my gosh. Oklahoma State is the epitome. They're another one of those teams, the epitome of 2022. I get excited, then I get disappointed. I get excited, I get disappointed. It's so confusing.
They've only lost 2 weekends all year, Runes. This is the second one. I mean, what's to be disappointed about? They've had a great year.
I guess confused is I'll stick to the word confused. I just feel like their lineup keeps changing. I don't get it. Like, okay, Rock Riggio and Zach Erhardt at the top, and then I'm looking at these box scores. It's like they're not even starting. Like what?
I think Riggio's hurt.
Yeah, he must be. And then Erhardt pinch ran late in the other game, and so, so there. Who are their series losses? Gonzaga and
this weekend,
just this TCU. Got it. Yep. Be interesting.
I mean, the Big 12 race is fascinating as we come down the stretch here. With TCU, Oklahoma State, and Texas all clustered really close together, and then Texas Tech is still a factor, and they're ranked 9th in the country in our rankings, but I mean they're the 40s in the RPI. It's like, can they even host a regional? They need to really make a move there in the RPI. So that's a very interesting league right now.
And Texas Tech has proven that hosting is going to be important for them. They have not been all that sharp.
I have very little faith that they can win a road regional with their pitching because outside of Brandon Bertel and Andrew Morris, like their pitching's been a nightmare at times.
Yep. Very interesting. Boys, let's cut it there and save our energy for the Thursday night weekly preview because this is a big week for me. I need to not just throw darts for my picks. I need to lock in and make quality decisions.
I like it. Me too, Runes. You and me both. Let's get after it.
Let's go. The guy in first place, Fitzy, is imminently catchable. Like just absolutely catchable.
Is it me now?
It's Kendall. Yeah, that's
what about
paper
Burt
tiger
Granger?
right
what
there.
do you do? Paper tiger. That's right. Well, we can't name Riley Rogers.
I feel like I've won this like 3 out of the last 4 years or something like that.
Nobody knows who's won it, except for Burke won it last year, and that's all I know. I have no idea who won it before.
Burke's still tweeting about his win last year.
That's right.
So great. Gentlemen, appreciate it. Always a pleasure to see your faces. Appreciate all the questions in the chat over there, all the listeners. If you're watching us on the YouTube feed, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks again to our friends at S2 Cognition. And that is it. We will catch you guys Thursday night for the weekend preview show. Have a good week, everybody.